e-bike has electric assist. So whether it's power assist or a throttle, if it's electric, it makes it an e-bike. If you're pedaling it on your own, that's a pedal bike or a push bike. If you have a motor on the bike, then it becomes a motorbike. So it's pretty straightforward. Here you see some of the e-bikes, you know, they're different sizes, different purposes, different weights. So basically you want to think about why you're riding, how you're going to ride, who you're going to ride when you're thinking about selecting an e-bike. Gas-powered bikes, you know, we're partial to bicycles, e-bikes and person-powered bikes. So a lot of cargo bikes these days, and that's a wonderful thing to see. So where's the power come from? So this is another thing you have to think about when you're buying an e-bike. Do you want the power to be on the front hub? Do you want it to be in the middle of the bike or on the rear drive? So something to talk about with friends, with bike shop people to determine what's going to work best for you. The battery packs will change placement as well. So I tend to want to go with a center pack so that you have more of the weight, but it's really an individual decision. So many different e-bikes to choose from, and now they're coming down on price as well, which is wonderful. You need to know what your e-bike classification is. So not to pigeonhole you, but you need to know if you're a class 1, 2, or 3, or if you haven't bought your bike yet, whether you want to be a class 1, 2, or 3. So this slide gives you a general idea. It's based on what the speed is and how the power is provided. And that matters because it is going to restrict your use of certain pathways and trails, and it's just something that you should consider. Also important to consider when you're buying an e-bike for your kids. I'm partial to power assist, but I'm not going to judge anyone if they decide to get a throttle e-bike. So I think it's back to you now, Kevin.
Sure, yeah. So when we're talking about choosing bikes, and again, some of you have done this already, and that's good. And that being said, that bike is, depending on the type, is good for, it can be used for a lot of different things, but it's probably better at one thing than another. So if you're looking to do a type of ride, which is more of a fun, you know, out in the open road, going for a long distance joyride, that's a different, you're gonna be able to do that easier on a certain type of e-bike as opposed to something where you're carrying apparently a 25-gallon drum of honey. I don't know, it happens, it's possible. I don't know, maybe Winnie the Pooh needs an e-bike. Choosing the type of vehicle that matches the type of trip that you're usually going to be doing can make you more comfortable and more likely to ride. But that doesn't mean that if you needed to carry something on a type of bike that didn't have those facilities or those capabilities, you couldn't do it. There's still ways to make it work.
Hey, Kevin, I just want to let you know, we got a question from Darcy. Considering getting an e-bike for my 14-year-old son, I'm very concerned about safety.
Yeah.
So what advice would you give Darcy?
Sure. So that's sort of what we're talking about here. The things to consider as far, well, in addition to the age of the rider, are these questions here. So what are you using the bike for? What kind of bikes are the people that you're going to be riding with have? Is a good sort of, if you're at a complete loss, that's a way to get more information. Money is obviously a good, you know, concern for people. If you need to get the bike A to B without its own power, will it fit on the back of the car? Will it fit in the car? Will it fit on the front of a bus? These are concerns. And then because it is electric and it's got that motor, one of the primary things is how fast do you want to go and how far do you want to go? Different bikes have different capabilities. And especially when thinking about for children, the difference between a bike that goes 28 miles an hour and a bike that goes 20 miles an hour is on paper 8 miles, but those 8 miles make a huge difference. And moving at 28 miles an hour feels very different than moving at 20 miles an hour. So a bike that doesn't have a throttle is one that requires you to pedal in order to get that power from the electric motor. And so something that is more focused on pedal assist as opposed to feeling like a motorcycle is probably something that's going to be better for someone at an entry level. That being said, there's so many different types. And so some of the bikes have the ability to engage and disengage the throttle. Some of the bikes have the ability to only use one or the other. And so knowing where you want to start and then going into the bike shops, seeing what they have, taking things out for test drives is always encouraged, and figuring out what it is that you feel comfortable either riding yourself or having someone else ride. So the last item on that list was carrying things. That's sort of the secondary, I think, thing that people think about when they think about e-bikes. The first thing they think about is it makes it easier for me to get around. It means I can go faster or, oops, there we go. Or keep up with friends that I'm riding with or things like that. But then the other one is that we're getting closer to something that can essentially replace a car. So you can do trips on an e-bike that you couldn't do on a regular bike, and you can do trips on an e-bike that you could do in a car. And so that means carrying things. What that doesn't mean is carrying things in a backpack on your back, hopefully. What that means is carrying the weight on the bicycle itself. So you can see there's a couple different options as far as racks and accessories and things like that. But the closer you get to being able to use the e-bike as a form of transportation, the closer you get to being able to use the e-bike as, oh, I've got a pen here, let me see, laser pointer. Ooh, look at that. Okay, cool. So the closer you get to being able to, replace a car trip with an e-bike, I've found that the times that I am more likely to, make that lifestyle change is when it's the easiest for me. So setting yourself up for success, making it easier for you to do those things is something that's going to make a lot of sense. That being said, and I'm just going to keep on moving through here because I want to make sure we get time for our questions. E-bikes cost money, and money means people are, going to desire what you have. I don't know a better way to put that. So what that means is there's ways to protect your bike. Good rule of thumb is that a lock should cost about 10% of the bike's value. The old rule of thumb was the lighter the bike, the heavier the lock, because a light bike used to mean that it was an expensive bike. With e-bikes, it's sort of the opposite, I think. Maybe the heavier the bike, the heavier the lock. But the other neat thing about e-bikes is you can carry that weight on the bike. So while I wouldn't carry a 15-pound, 6-inch thick chain around my back on a regular bicycle, that's something that I could carry the weight on an e-bike and feel a little more comfortable when I do that. U-locks are great. A lot of the e-bikes will have built-in locking, capabilities, but for those that don't, looking into where you can find these bike lockers. They're oftentimes near the coaster and trolley stops, at least some of the major ones. And you can look into renting those if you're a commuter who's going on, regular stops every week. And then the other neat thing that we've recently partnered with is an organization called Bike Index. Whether you have an e-bike or not, whether you have any kind of bike, I'd recommend right now or after the presentation, just do a quick Google search for Bike Index because they're a very cool service that allows you to save a record of your bicycle, put a bunch of information about it onto the space, and then if something ever did happen, it makes it a lot easier to find your bicycle. They'll put out a call saying the bike has been lost, and it help everyone who's on there is helping to look for it. So it's this sort of central hub. There are still some state organizations, I think, that do some sort of bike registration, but I mean, as a kid, I remember going to the fire station and registering my bike, but I don't think that's something they do anymore. So Bike Index is sort of the replacement for that. What kind of equipment do I need / gear and accessories? You want to take that one, Kristine?
Absolutely. So I just want to show you my lock. This seems like overkill, biggest lock I've ever bought. But when I bought an e-bike and I paid that kind of money, I thought I'm going to buy a proper lock. So that's my insurance, but my everyday insurance is I put this on my seat and I just think it's a deterrent because come on, don't take my bike, you know, go somewhere else. So I hope that helps. Biggest thing about gear is it's good to have good gear. Um, so we want you to be bright, we want you to be seen, we want you to be comfortable, so things that are quick dry. We want you to have on your bike what you potentially could need. Have you, you know, if you have a flat, if you need to store things. So it is good to invest in a bit of good gear. The most important thing, well, you know, masks these days, which I'm actually still riding with because I now discovered, you know, this helps you with road debris too. So it may be a good thing after all. But a really good helmet. Investing in a really good helmet. This is a Loomis. A friend had this on who had a very serious collision injury, and I went out and bought mine right after that because it indeed did save her life. So have a good helmet. Please don't buy a black helmet. Have color, be visible. Think about that with your helmet. Have fun with your helmet. If you're buying a helmet for a child, think about a fun helmet that they're going to want to wear. If you have adolescent boys, think about letting them paint or sticker up their helmet, anything that makes it cool so that they put it on their head and they snap it and they have a proper fit. So in this little demonstration, it shows you want to make sure it fits snugly around your ears, chin strap snapped. You have to be able to have 2 fingers so it's snug enough so it keeps on your head. A lot of helmets these days have the retainer in the back so that you can have it snugly fit the back of your head. So just make sure you have a good helmet, proper fit. Now our presentation went away. Are you aware of that, Mr. Kevin? At least it did on my screen. So as far as other gear, you know, you do want to be prepared for flats. Don't let it be a deterrent. I mean, if you get concerned about whether you'll have a flat and don't ride, that's kind of silly, right? Because when you get into your car, are you thinking about, oh my gosh, am I going to have a flat? If you have a flat, you can take care of it. You can learn how to change your own flats. You can get a friend to change it. You can lock your bike up and come back to it. There's a lot of options, so don't let that be a deterrent to riding. Tools for longer rides, you want to make sure you have water, you have a pump that works well, a repair kit, CO2 cartridge. I like pumps the old-fashioned way. It's less to throw away, better for our environment. Multi-tool, it's always good to have a little bit on your bike so that you can be self-sufficient and be prepared. But the best thing you can have on your bike is a phone. So if you're not well prepared, or if it's something that you can't manage, you can make a phone call and you can get some help. So best thing is you know best what you need on your bike ride. So just be prepared and think about things up front. Lots of wonderful accessories. So if you have money and you have it to spend, you can buy all sorts of things, but you don't have to, you can manage with just a little bit of things. So they have, consider buying a mirror, whether that works for you. A lot of people swear by them, other people don't like them. Depending on where you have the ability to store your bike. If you can bring it inside or into a garage, that's best. So it doesn't have the elements, but we're in San Diego, so our elements are pretty lightweight as far as, you know, we don't have to contend with snow and ice and a lot of rain. But do take care of your bike, and we'll get into that a lot during the panel discussion, how to do bike maintenance, what to be concerned about. It is important to take care of your bike and get it maintained. So Kevin, now we'll talk about care and maintenance.
Yeah, great transition. So it's a mechanical device. I mean, but the thing I think that's good to remember is that not everybody that drives a car knows how to fix every single aspect of their car, but that doesn't prevent them from driving a car. because they know that there's other options that they have. They know the basics of how to use the car, and you should know the basics of how to use the e-bike. And those are going to depend a little bit on the type of e-bike that you have. So if you have a throttle that's primarily used for starting from a stop, if you're using the throttle constantly, if you're just using the throttle to move the bicycle, that's going to put more wear and tear on the bicycle itself. That's going to make it so that some of those components don't last as long. It's going to make it so the battery doesn't last as long. A lot of e-bikes, and again, this depends on your specific bike, but they'll have different types of settings, different modes. So there's something like an eco mode, something like a touring mode, and something like a turbo mode. So when you're, racing your friends and want to show off how fast the bike can go, great. But leaving the bike in that mode all the time is something that's going to make the components of the bike degrade faster. It's going to make that battery degrade faster. There's also, maybe even in addition to these different power modes, different power settings. So putting the motor at a numbered level between 1 and 5 or 10, or, depends on the bike. Figure out what it is that makes you feel comfortable, figure out what it is that makes it useful for you, and then maybe even go just one step below that. If you're looking to extend the life of the bicycle, if you're looking to have it last as long as it can. In addition to all of these different computerized, motorized components of the bicycle, there's also just the same components of the bicycle that exist for every other bicycle, and that's the gears. So putting your bike in a gear which makes the bike work harder, makes the motor work harder, is something that can degrade the life of the components of the bicycle. So if you're anticipating when to change gears ahead of that happening, that makes it easier, as opposed to getting halfway up the hill and then realizing that the bike's working very hard, that you're working very hard, and then making those changes. So in the same way that it is important to get comfortable with the different motorized capabilities of the bike before you actually go out on the ride, it's also very useful to get comfortable with the gears of the bike before you go out on the ride. And so what that means is take it around the block a couple times and just figure out what it feels like at power level 5, but then in the 9th gear, or power level 5 and then in the 1st gear. Try it out. The best way to learn is just to try it. We can talk about, gear ratios for hours. We can talk about, RPMs for a long time, but none of that is going to be a substitute for figuring it out yourself and experimenting. Do what feels good to you. And practice doing these things before you're on the ride as opposed to when you're on the ride. And boost up your e-bike power setting. Cool, look at that guy having so much fun. So all of those things are when the bike is working great. When the bike isn't working great, that's fine. It's not fine, but it's not the end of the world, because in the same way that if there was a problem with your car, that's not the end of the world, because you know that you have options. So some of the things that could happen are falling down. Some of the things that could happen are it gets dark, the lights are out. Some of the things that could happen are there's a mechanical or a flat tire problem. Knowing what to do if those things happen ahead of time makes sense to me. So options that you have, depending on the problem, are things like walking with the bike to the nearest bike shop, locking up the bike and then leaving it there, and then walking to the bike shop and coming back. That's one of the things that's important to know about the specific e-bike that you buy. Some of them are pretty clearly not designed to ever be used without electric power. And if you try to use it without electric power, it's almost impossible. Some of them are a little bit closer to a regular bike with an electric motor on them. And those are ones that are going to make it easier to use if the battery goes dead or things like that. Will the bike fit in the back of a car? Great, call a friend, have them pick you up. Call an Uber or a Lyft, apologize profusely, and then stick the bike in the trunk of their car. Does the bike fit on the front of the bus? Great, you can use that. Have supplies with you. But again, this all comes down to planning ahead, making sure you know the answer to the question before it even comes up. As far as maintenance goes, we've got some people on the call today who are bigger experts than I am, which is great. But the super easy thing to remember is, maybe you all know it and you can say it all with me, the ABC quick check, checking the air, checking the brakes.
Brakes.
There you go. And C stands for either crank, cassette, cog, chain, any of those things. But the thing to remember about all of these components is small attention after every time you ride, before every time you ride, makes it so much easier to deal with than just looking at the bike, at the details of the bike once every 6 months and realizing you've got to replace something completely. So lubing a chain isn't something that's very hard once you've done it once or twice. The friends at your neighborhood bike shop are absolutely going to be happy to show you how that works when it's not a busy time of day. So there's all kinds of cool things that you can do, but not knowing how to do these things shouldn't prevent you from using the bike. But if you do know how to do them, there are things that can help to extend the length of the bicycle. Now, if we're talking about e-bikes specifically, which guess what, today we are, some of the things that can be a little bit more of an issue with an e-bike than with a regular bike are specifically the spokes. Because it's got that strong motor that's pulling on the wheel, they can come out of alignment a little bit easier than they would with a regular bicycle. Tire pressure. Your e-bike tire may be very different than a standard bicycle tire, and definitely is different than a car tire. Some of them are so specialized that you've got to order the tires and tubes from the company directly when you have a problem with them. So because it's different, just because you know how to use a bicycle and you've done it for 100 years and now you're on this e-bike and assume it's exactly the same, it's not. There's still things to notice and keep an eye on. So it's got a specific number on it as far as PSI goes, but just making sure the tire isn't too scooshy is my good rule of thumb. That's a technical term, scooshy. Everyone write that down and highlight it. Axle nuts on the wheels can get loose. Brake pads are obviously also something that's going to be important to check before you go. And then again, because it is a motor driving that chain, looking out for the wear and tear on the chain. You've got a battery on your bicycle. Something to think about before buying an e-bike is, am I going to be traveling with this e-bike? And if so, can I bring the battery on the plane? Can I bring the battery on the train? Do I have to ship the battery separately? Absolutely something that I hadn't even thought about before getting into this topic, and then found out pretty quickly that that's something you have to worry about. Knowing how your charger works, having a spare charger is something that sometimes people do, but no battery is going to last forever, even if you're doing things like keeping it out of direct sunlight, keeping it out of a place where it gets too cold or too hot. No matter what, no battery is going to last forever. And so, keeping an eye on the life of the battery, how long is it holding its charge for, and making sure that you're using the correct charger with the correct battery. If you go over to a friend's house and it seems like the plug kind of fits, great, but look at the numbers, look at the brand, because it's an easy way to degrade the life of the battery and can actually be dangerous if you're charging it the wrong, with the wrong type. And then we'll let our bike shop mechanics go into this a little bit more. If you go in every 6 months, great. If you go in every 12 months, great. It absolutely depends on how much you're using the bicycle. But when there's an issue, bring it in, but get to know them before that. I say, leave your wallet at home the first time, just go in and say hi, get acquainted. And then when you do have that problem, now you're already on a first name basis and everyone gets along a little bit better. So yeah, that makes sense to me. Kristine, you've got 2 minutes to go over where do I ride.
All right. Well, you have a lot of resources. So you can go to iCommute. Sandag has a lot of good resources. They're getting better and better bike maps. And so you can rely on that. You can ask friends. You can just explore on your own. What's nice about an e-bike is it opens up possibilities. You may be able to go further and faster than you would normally. You don't have to worry about how you're going to get home if you poop out, because you're going to have a little assistance with your e-bike. For me, that's why I bought my e-bike. I was having some medical challenges, and it has opened up the possibilities for me, and I think it will for you as well. Where can you ride? There are some do's and don'ts. So depending on the class of bike, there are some places that you're allowed to be and you're not allowed to be. So just make sure you know that going forward. And we have people like Susie Murphy and the Mountain Bike Association that are trying to open up even more areas for us, which is wonderful. So comfort level, right? Some of us are very comfortable riding on the road. Some of us want separated facilities. We're getting more options, so that's a very good thing. So we have good classes. Sylvie put a link in the chat for classes if you want to get more training on bike law, bike technique, skills, types of bike, maintenance, all that kind of stuff. You can get more information. We just want you to ride. So wherever you feel comfortable, we want you to ride and ride as much as you can and have a lot of fun and be safe. So we're going through all this quickly because we want to make sure that we have enough time for the panel. We don't want you riding on sidewalks though, and we really want to have you encourage your kids as they grow older to move from sidewalks onto the street. Cars expect you on the street. Cars don't expect you on the sidewalk. Every driveway is an intersection on a sidewalk. If you're in the street, it's kind of a different situation. So just know the rules and be compliant and be safe and be considerate to pedestrians. This slide lists some of the places where you can't ride an e-bike, but the best thing to say is that there are more places that you can than you can't. So don't let that be a deterrent for actually considering getting an e-bike and riding. We talked about other ways that you can build your skills, and you can know techniques to be safe, and you can ride a bike properly and considerately and have a ton of fun. So how'd I do, Kevin?
You did great.
All right,
feel free to find us on YouTube. We've got information about all these things we just mentioned. This class, in fact, also will go up on YouTube and you can rewatch. We'll even, I'm sure, provide some of those slides specifically to you guys that have the details about where to ride and where not to ride.
Hey, Kevin, one thing I do want to mention, because we've flipped right through the pie chart, most collisions that happen are because of you as the rider. So if you can become more aware, if you can know the right and the wrong things to do, the things to look out for, you can become a better rider and you will be safer. We always think that it's the motorist or the pedestrian or the squirrel or the rock or whatever that's gonna give us difficulty, and really for the most part it's you. So that's why we really encourage you to practice, learn more, ask a friend for help, what have you, and just be very alert. Confirmation from the dogs, be very alert when you're riding a bicycle. So
cool. Okay. Great. Let's jump into the part where someone other than Kristine and I talk. How's that sound? Everyone claps. Yay, we're so excited.
Yeah.
Okay. We've got a couple presenters, and I think the best way to do this is to have you introduce yourselves. So let's start with the Rad Wagon Mommy.
Yeah, I think I unmuted myself. Hi, everyone. My name is Tatjana Tomic, also known as the Rad Wagon Mommy, because I'm obviously a mommy of 2 little kids. And I live in Mission Hills. I never actually rode bikes before. In fact, I always thought it was kind of a nerdy thing to do. And then the pandemic happened and I've got 2 kids. There's nothing to do. We ended up getting an e-bike. And it was the best thing we've ever done. All we do is ride. We pretty much don't drive car anymore. Now I'm like, anyone that drives a car, we can be friends, you know? So yeah, it's a lot of fun. We do like kids drop-offs to school, pickups. We do a lot of play dates. And on Sundays, we have this like huge group of parents that are in the same situation like us with a couple of kids, and we all ride together and we pick a different park or playground to ride together. It's a lot of fun.
Wonderful. Thanks for being here. And we've also got, I don't see you in the screen. Bryant, are you here?
Yeah, Bryant, hello.
Hey.
Hello, everyone. Sorry, I was having trouble with my video, so I'm gonna have to stick with just audio. But my name is Bryant Hernandez. I'm actually from Santa Barbara. I'm representing currently Bcycle Santa Barbara. So Bcycle is a nationwide company. They're a subsidiary of Trek. What we provide is an e-bike share program for the city of Santa Barbara. And my experience covers bikes in general. I used to be the lead mechanic at UCSB's bike shop. I graduated there 2 years ago. And I also currently work as a part-time job at REI Santa Barbara. And I'm a tech there in their bike shop. So I have familiarity with bikes all around. And with Bcycle, I'm a field technician. So I wrench on e-bikes and I troubleshoot as well on the field. And I'm excited to be a part of this. I think what you guys are doing is absolutely amazing in San Diego. And I'm definitely going to look into seeing, because I know we have a bike coalition as well, but I don't think we have a program as awesome as this.
Thank you. That's always nice.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we do okay. So we have some questions that had been asked ahead of time. We have some questions that you guys had put in the chat. And so we're going to cover those first couple ones, and then when we have time at the end, we'll open it up and continue to take more questions from the chat room. But Tatjana and Bryant, let me throw this first one out to you guys each, and just, you know, speaking from your own level of experience, being who you are, I think specifically we're asking about older riders, but this also applies just sort of what's something that you thought that something that you'd wish you'd known beforehand when getting into the sort of e-bike world.
Well, I can answer this one first.
Sure.
In terms of e-bikes specifically, the biggest question I asked myself, or I wish I would have asked myself, is what am I really going to be using it for? And taking that into consideration in regards to your environment and the city you're living in, because you know, the trails and the bike paths that San Diego has are completely different than the ones here in Santa Barbara. So you have to really take into account what you'll be using it for and where you'll be using it for. I think those two are the two of the most important questions when considering an e-bike and what type of bike you'll be choosing.
Perfect.
All right, and I'm going to speak up here because I'm 55 plus, so I'm one of those older riders. And for me, it was all about weight, and that's why I decided to get a folding e-turn, because it's a little lighter. There's so many more options now than when I bought my bike 5 years ago. It's amazing. Also, it's a step through, so I don't have to swing my leg up and around, though I can still do that, guys. I can still do that. I figured a step through is a smarter option. And the comfort, my positioning, it positions me a lot different than my road bike, and it's just more comfortable. So, you know, I earn the right to have more comfort.
I agree with you, actually, because my mom tried my Red Wagon and it was too heavy for her. So I was also going to say weight is a big factor. But in addition to that, trying a bike is important, especially because of the height of the bike. Like, I have a friend who got an e-bike, and both she and her husband, and it was like perfectly fitting. But then when they tried to attach the seat for the kid, they didn't think about that. And there's like the seat needs to be moved, but it can't be moved. So you have to think about what exactly you're going to use the bike for, and put all those factors together before you make a purchase, because it is a large purchase.
I think this next one's going to be for Bryant. I know you're not a scientist or anything, but could you talk a little bit about how the size of the wheel affects the bicycle? Because that's a question that we've had from people in terms of pedaling, but also in terms of steering and other things like that.
Yeah, definitely. So typically, just speaking functionality, even with a car or, you know, something equipped with wheels, smaller wheels means a smaller surface area that you're going to be covering. So you will have to exert more energy with any object that's equipped with smaller wheels to travel and cover a much larger distance. It's something personally that when considering e-bikes isn't too big of an issue because of the pedal assist, because of the motor that's basically covering that lack of energy that, or it'll be basically, I'm trying to find the words. The e-bike basically serves and enables you to cover that distance where the smaller wheels might displace you.
Yeah, and my bike has 20-inch wheels, and part of it, I mean, the folding aspect of it, I know I have to cover more ground with the wheels, but like Bryant said, I mean, you have power assist, so that kind of offsets. I bought my bike too because if I'm downtown for meetings and I miss the last coaster, I'd have to pre-arrange for a bike. But because mine's folding, they consider it cargo, and I don't have to pre-arrange for the bike. Now that all changed with the pandemic, and you know, Amtrak may have modified their requirements, but that's another thing. You can more easily get it in your car. You can more easily travel with it, and you can hopefully more easily use transit. So that's another consideration.
And just to add on that, it's a great point you brought up, Kristine. Yeah, smaller wheels really depends on the type of e-bike you'll be getting. Most bikes, especially if you're doing mountain riding, you're going to be seeing, you know, bigger wheels, wider wheels, because the traction needed for that type of riding is a lot greater, as opposed to the mobility aspect where you were discussing, Kristine, where smaller wheels are much more easier to transport, and a lot of them just fold up in, you know, your trunk, or you can put them on your hitch rack on your car.
Very cool and very true. It's just a good reminder, I think, of the wide variety of options that you have with this type of device. And so I think sometimes people hear the word e-bike and they have a specific item in mind. But there's such a wide variety, and knowing what that variety is before you go out makes a lot of sense. And staying with the mechanic sort of issues as it relates to e-bikes, we've had specific questions about the motor. We've had specific questions about the battery. In super general terms, break down problems that you as a casual user and owner of an e-bike should feel comfortable addressing yourself, and issues that you should probably bring in and have maintenance by a professional. What do you think, Bryant?
So in terms of looking at the question, most simple things, like sometimes power issues are often really just cables being disconnected. And it's really looking at the cable housing and tracking that and seeing if there is indeed a disconnection and just plugging it in. Anything where you feel that you're not confident enough to really find the answer, I always suggest having a mechanic or a professional look at the e-bike, especially in regards to power issues, because sometimes it's just the computer programming for whatever reason. It's not logging the signals correctly to the computer Purion that powers the e-bike. And sometimes it's, you know, issues with the battery itself where it's something that needs to be warrantied out with the company. And I saw a message in the chat, and a lot of bikes, especially e-bikes, their warranties are great. Working at REI, we work with a lot of companies, Cannondale, Electra, just to name a few. But most simple things I would say can be fixable, especially when it comes to power. But when in doubt, take it to an authorized retailer if that's what the bike company that you have bought specifies, or just a professional.
And I'll just jump in to say that it happened to me actually a couple of times when I was just starting to ride, and it was like I needed to go up the hill up Presidio to come back home from a park. just try not to freak out. It's not the end of the world. You can always take advantage of your gears, and you can still make it home okay, and then figure it out before you really lose it. I know for me, the first time it happened, I was like really worried because I'm with 2 kids and I'm like pedaling 150 pounds of weight bike and the children. But I was like, okay, I have the gears, I can do this. And when I got home, my husband was like, oh, it's just the cable. And now I know how to do it myself.
Yeah, I have a question for our rad wagon mommy that I don't think we're going to ask. Can I just ask it? Get us off track here. But do you have other parents that look at you and they're critical about you having your family on e-bikes? You know, like I'm envisioning you on your cargo bike with 2 kids on the back and groceries in the front. Do you find that to be, because I have a friend years ago, like 10 years ago, that was riding her kids on a cargo bike before others were, and she got, you know, pulled over by the sheriff. She got other parents that were telling her she was irresponsible. Not to open a can of worms, but I just wanted you to speak to that.
Actually, I get a totally opposite reaction. I get like cars like next to me at the light. They're like, wow, nice. This is awesome. People ask a lot of questions like, where did you get this bike? Oh my gosh, can you fit 2 kids? Can you fit 3 kids? Can we try it? Can we test ride it? What else do you do on it? Or are you worried? Can you really do a lot of things on this bike? Like people don't believe me that we almost don't drive. Like I do everything on this bike now.
All right,
get a lot of exciting reactions.
That's excellent to hear. That's basically progress in 10 years time. So
that is good to know.
So the answer to the question on the screen anyway is yes, absolutely. It is safe to ride with your kids on an e-bike, as safe as anything can be, I think.
100%.
Are you using, what kind of specialized equipment are you using when riding with more than one person on the bicycle?
What do you mean by specialized equipment?
Well, I know that e-bikes can have different, so like some of them will have like the really long base in the back over the back wheel, so it's a big wide space for people to sit, or some of them will have a specialized like specific bike seat, or you know, other things like that.
Like the accessories we have. So I have a 3.5-year-old and I have a 1-year-old, or like 1.5-year-old. For him, I have the child seat. And for my older one, it's called deck ped. And then there's a caboose, which she can hold on to while we're riding. And also there are little wooden foot pedal things.
Platform.
Yes, exactly. And originally I was going to get 2 seats because of their age. However, as soon as she saw my oldest, as soon as she saw her friend from school ride without the seat, she was like, I don't want to see the seat ever again. So it was perfect. I was like, great, return, save money.
Cool. Okay. Are typical e-bike speeds safe in protected bike lanes? I think we can all sort of take a swipe at this one. The first thing that comes to mind for me is, because I know people have had concerns about protected bike lanes specifically, and we've seen these go in all over San Diego County. I'm thinking specifically about downtown San Diego, moving up into Hillcrest. There's protected bike lanes where they've got a literal concrete barrier in between where the bicycles ride and where the cars are. No matter what, anytime you're sharing a space with anybody else on a bicycle, walking, car, whatever, being cognizant of your speed relative to their speed, passing in an appropriate way is something that's important. The bike lanes, you know, these aren't things that they've just now decided are a good thing. This has been a very long process to get these put in. And yes, the technology has changed somewhat. You know, if 5 years ago you'd told me that the city would be covered in electric scooters, I wouldn't have believed you, but here we are. So there are all kinds of different road users that are going to use all kinds of different road facilities, protected bike lanes included. So it is possible to get so fast that you're unsafe. Absolutely, that's true. But riding in a way that makes sense for everybody means riding at a lower speed, being courteous, being nice. Yeah, that's my take on it. What do you think, Kristine?
Yeah, I just put in the chat, separated bikeways, be safe, be courteous, be aware. So ring your bell. So I think it's good to have bike bells. And it's an easy way to communicate, let people know you're coming up on them. Sometimes separated bikeways become pedestrian ways, even if there's a pedestrian way adjacent to it. And you just need to, just play nice and let people know that you're there. And I do a lot of thumbs up. I do a lot of thank you and peace signs. I share this finger, not the other finger, because I think it just goes a long way.
Absolutely. I think this one was, I didn't want to skip over it, and I'm glad someone asked it because we got a lot of feedback. And I think sort of the anecdote is kids have spent more time out of school recently, and kids, now that the prices of e-bikes have dropped at least somewhat, more and more kids are being gifted these devices and just sort of handed them and, go have fun kind of thing. And that isn't guaranteed to, but can lead to some more reckless behavior. How do you fix that? How do you address that? I don't know, Tatjana, your kids probably aren't old enough to do wheelies off of curbs or anything yet. But when that comes up, I imagine that you're sort of at an advantage just because they already have experience with this device already, so they respect it a little bit more, maybe? Does that make sense?
I think for me as a parent, once we get there, so I try to set an example. It's just like with manners. So what kids do, what they see others do. So if you as a parent set a good example and you are not being reckless and following the rules and being respectful to other riders and drivers and paying attention, I think it's going to rub off on them. And as a parent, if you're already in this situation and you are not riding, but your child wants to ride, maybe you can ride together and it will be your hobby together, at least for the beginning. So you can kind of teach them what to do and show them the right way to do it.
Yeah, so parents are key, right? So a youth on a bike is really the responsibility of their parents. So Sean put in the chat, that we're having a lot of youth riding on sidewalks and old Encinitas. That's a concern, definitely. What's nice is that mom and dad aren't being taxi service, and we're cutting down on car trips with these e-bikes. However, we do want everybody to be safe, courteous, following the rules of the road. So that circles back around to parents talking to their kids about the best way, the proper way to ride a bicycle. We just want everyone to be safe. So.
Oh, great. Anybody else, Bryant, or any of the folks at Radpower who are on the call? Did you guys want to jump in? Any tips that you've seen for dealing with the teenage variety?
Yeah, I would just add to what Kristine was saying. I think having that discussion with adolescents and teenagers is very key. And as the saying goes, with great power comes great responsibility. So it's kind of just teaching that and really instilling it in them. And as a parent, if you have that direct contact, it's much easier. In the streets, it's something that, communication is the first step. And most of the time, unfortunately, they probably won't listen. It's something that we encounter a lot in SB. Specifically, they're calling the wheelie kids. And, they're doing wheelies on e-bikes, which is even more dangerous. But it's one of those where I'm not sure in regards to your specific city. I know a lot of people here have reached out to city council members, and they're coming up with programs to kind of mitigate that situation to where they're still going to allow that outlet for, teenagers to ride their bikes and enjoy the outdoors, but doing so in a safe manner that isn't going to affect everyone else's safety. So my biggest suggestion is first, that communication, and just the second is reaching out to local officials and local organizations that might have more of an outreach for things like that.
Chris, did you want to jump in? Nope, that's fine.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, I mean, the big thing is the education, especially with with Rad, because we're opening our retail location in IB here on the 10th, and so we're going to be front lines. We're going to have kids from the neighborhood and all over, especially parents that are going to have children. So it's going to be really up to us to educate these guys as well, being front lines on that end. So obviously we, as parents, you have to be more proactive as much as you can to do what you can. But again, the kids, and they're going to get to a certain age where they're going to do what they want, or at least they're going to think they're going to be able to do whatever they want. And like I did when I was young. And so, but it's awareness. And that's one thing I definitely know that we're going to be really aware of in the store as well, as when we have the younger generation coming in, because we have to educate them as well, because they're the ones that's going to keep this going. They're the ones that are going to, we got to teach our youth to the value of bikes. And because I've been on one since I was a child. And so, and now looking back, I didn't really see the benefit at the time. I thought it was just it got me to my friend's house and back. And now I have so much more of appreciation for it as I'm older, to really, because it's turned into like a health thing for me, where I go out and bike because it's healthy instead of just getting me to my friend's house like it used to be.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm glad that you guys are there and are able to provide some of those resources for kids. I hope that we can continue to provide education classes. I have been doing this for 5 or 6 years, and I will say, if you have any tips on how to get teenagers to attend a bike class, let me know. I'll take all advice you guys have. Okay, another maintenance-based class. Another maintenance-based question. So Bryant, maybe you can take this one. Why is it that the brakes and chains wear out faster on e-bikes than on regular bikes? We touched on this a little bit during the presentation, but if you wanted to go into a little bit more detail.
Yeah, definitely. Before I answer that question, I wanted to touch base on earlier. I believe Darcy asked what type of e-bike is best for her 14-year-old. And since we are on the topic of youth, I was going to suggest that I think a class 1 would be the best. Stay away from the throttle, because it's a lot much more power, a lot much more danger that they're going to be equipped with. And in regards to the type of class 1 pedal assist, it really depends on if they're going to be, sticking to road riding specifically, if they're doing, some type of hybrid gravel and road. And a mountain bike is something that I would personally not suggest unless they've already have experience with mountain bikes, because it's so much more dangerous and just a lot of other components in regards to mountain bikes specifically. But my suggestion would be a class 1 entry-level e-bike. And a lot of shops will allow you to test ride. I know REI, if whatever e-bikes we do have online, you can either order them online, have a built-in store, and test ride in them. And you don't have to purchase them, which is a great feature that I believe our shop offers. But I know a lot of shops offer that as well. I'm not sure if Chris can speak to that. But yeah, that's my suggestion, Darcy, if you're still here.
Good advice. Yeah, the throttle is sort of an invitation to pretend like you're riding a motorcycle, I think, sometimes.
Definitely.
And
Exactly.
yeah, right.
Yeah, very good point. Very good point.
So,
yeah, I was gonna. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No, please.
No, I was just gonna go ahead and speak on it because as we are opening up that Rad store in Imperial Beach, I mean, test rides are gonna be probably something we're equipped for and we're ready for and encourage. And I'll be there, so look for this guy, and then I'll make sure your kid's safe.
Very cool. Yes, I think the more time that I mean, it doesn't matter what your age is, old or young, but the more time you have sort of practicing, the more time you see people using them in the correct way, the better able you are to treat it with respect, I think, as you continue to ride. So Brian, as far as the specific components, so as far as I understand it, the reason that they're wearing out is because you're working them harder. You're, putting more stress on the components because you do have that motor. Is that your understanding?
Yeah, definitely. So you can go about it 2 ways. It really depends on the type of e-bike you have. But the 2 factors are torque and just power. These bikes are operating at much faster speeds than a typical bike in general. And the mid-level motors, as opposed to hub, whether it's front or rear, tend to wear out your chain a lot quicker, just because you're exerting much more downward force when you're pedaling that activates the torque sensors in the crank arms. And overall, with more power being exerted on the chain, it stretches out the chain a lot quicker, especially at higher speeds. The front and rear hub motors, they do wear out as fast, or not as fast, but much quicker than regular bikes. But because their power is exerted based on the cadence sensors that are on the wheels, and that basically triggers the computer to activate the pedal assist and not so much the torque you're exerting. And that's why specifically the front and rear hub motors will wear out your brake, or your chain specifically, a lot less. Sorry. And then your brakes, most brakes that are equipped on e-bikes are disc brakes. And the way disc brakes work, the number one thing that I've seen working on e-bikes is when people buy them, whether they assemble them themselves or at the shop, a lot of mechanics, it's unfortunate, but they don't bed in the brakes properly. And that causes the brakes to wear out unevenly and a lot quicker. So when buying an e-bike, always ask a mechanic, have these brakes been bedded in already? And it's a quick process. It's something that you can learn on YouTube if you are building the e-bike yourself, or it's something you want to learn. And in regards to if they have been already bedded in properly, the way disc brakes work, at faster speeds, the metallic organic compounds that are in the brake pads are basically just going to wear out much quicker than the rubber pads. And there's a reason why the rubber pads aren't found on e-bikes, because at high speeds, you're going to cause a lot more friction, and that rubber is basically going to melt.
That sounds dramatic.
Yeah. And then for our e-bike specifically, we use roller brakes, which is a very outdated braking system. But our bikes are designed in a way where everything is anti-theft. And roller brakes is a component that is really annoying to work on. And as well, it's nobody wants them. That's why. So then it's something that they're not going to steal. And I believe the Radpower bikes, because we've worked on them at REI, those have disc brakes, whether it's mechanical or hydraulic.
Yeah, so I mean, it's especially the brakes. I mean, they're closer to car brakes than they are to traditional bicycle brakes, it seems like.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. Okay, I've got another one here specifically about e-mountain bikes, trail recommendations for e-mountain bikes.
Yeah, wondering if Susie's still on the call.
I didn't see her anymore.
All right, I think she had to drop off.
So there is an organization called the San Diego Mountain Bike Association. So we, as the Bicycle Coalition, focus mainly on commuting by bicycle, and there's other organizations that do other bike stuff. So the Mountain Bike Association in San Diego, check out their website. They've absolutely got recommendations for this stuff. As controversial as mountain bikes are, or I'm sorry, as controversial as e-bikes are on regular streets, they're absolutely as, if not more controversial on trails. And I think as time has gone on, people have gotten more comfortable with the idea. And we did have that slide where we listed some of the different places where you can ride them. So specifically, all City of San Diego trails. So that's Mission Trails, that's Tri-Canyon, Penasquitos, Black Mountain, and more. Some County of San Diego trails, but not all. And then there's some other options as well. The Mountain Bike Association has information about those. When you are using those trails, there are specific things to keep in mind. If the trail is wet, you're not riding on that trail, period. If there's a danger that it could be wet or potential to be wet, you're not riding on that trail. You're not there to leave tire tracks. You're there to, you know, leave as little trace as possible. And being courteous. It's, you know, people are there because they want to go fast, and that's fine. But I was in fact, I was in Mission Trails the other day, and there we were passed by a mountain biker. But I could tell they were coming from a long way away. They had those little bells that were just sort of going the whole time. So a half mile away, I could hear them coming. So I thought that was nice and courteous. So there are places to ride mountain bikes in San Diego. If you want more specific information than we've given today, the Mountain Bike Association in San Diego can absolutely help with that.
Yeah, I went ahead and put the link in the chat. So, and we had Susie, the executive director, on the call earlier, but she had to drop off. So.
Okay, where can I learn about riding or maintenance skills? I'm so glad you asked, unnamed person. I might have just written that question in myself for selfish reasons. We teach classes all over San Diego County. Check out the San Diego County Bicycle Coalition's website. Check out our YouTube page because we've got a couple educational videos there. We teach maintenance classes. We're starting up some new types of classes regarding maintenance. And your employer can sign up for free classes if you and you feel like you've got enough friends at your place of work that are interested in riding their bikes to work. We've got classes specifically for that. We've got e-bike classes. We've got classes where if you've got a new e-bike and you want to get more comfortable using it, we've got safe places for you to do that. So we at the San Diego County Bicycle Coalition can cover all kinds of different stuff. And I recommend checking out our website to find a calendar of events. Any questions in the chat that we didn't get to?
Yeah, I've been trying to keep my eye on them. I know Sylvia's as well. I think that we have covered a lot of ground, but hoping that somebody will put something in the chat if there is one that we missed. So what is the average cost of maintaining an e-bike per year? Wow, I think it's just, question. Yeah.
I think one of the things that, Bryant, I'll let you jump in, and maybe some of the Radpower guys want to talk about this as well. But I think the thing that I like to remember when it comes to e-bikes is that, yes, you're going to be spending more money, but is it possible for the e-bike trip to replace a car trip? And if so, that's money that you're saving when you're doing that. And there are people, it is possible, and some of us here know from personal experience, to completely replace the car trips with bike trips. If you've invested the money and you have the money to invest in an e-bike and into an e-bike that really suits your purposes and can take you where you want to go for a long time, then that's a good thing. The federal government, as I understand it, there are e-bike rebate programs that are in existence and are continuing to move through. The new transportation secretary, Pete Buttigieg, is a big bike fan. And so there's specific legislation that's being moved through that will provide you with a cash rebate if you buy an e-bike. And there's also state programs where you can trade in an old car and get money to buy an e-bike specifically. So no one's saying that these aren't more expensive, and the cost of maintaining an e-bike over the course of a year is probably more than the cost of maintaining a regular bicycle over the course of a year, but definitely less than a car. What do you think, Bryant?
Yeah, I think you made a great point. Having an e-bike, and as Tatjana has mentioned, it really is, in terms of environmentally friendly, it's super sustainable, and you're going to be saving a lot from just gas or just car maintenance because you won't be utilizing your car as often. More specifically, in regards to the specific type of e-bike you get, that's what it really comes down to, and also where you purchase your e-bike. I know a lot of shops offer, as an incentive for purchasing a bike through them, they offer free tune-ups for up to a year. I know they also offer free adjustments depending on the adjustments you need. And that's something that, you know, it's a money saver. But in general, it really depends on the type of bike you're getting, because mountain bikes have a lot more components that you're going to have to maintain on a regular basis. Road bikes in general vary depending on the components as well. But overall, it's hard to really give an average cost unless you can pinpoint a specific bike that you're looking at. And you made a good point, Kevin, that in general, e-bikes are going to cost more to maintain, because you're not just looking at a bike with much more powerful components. You also have a computer and a motor to assess as well. But those things, many people don't know. The cost is often covered by warranties. A lot of the issues you run into are just updating programming, updating software. In regards to the motors, it's rare, it's getting much more rare that motors fail. And when they do, it's usually a manufacturer defect as opposed to a rider issue. But those are the two biggest components that I've seen working on e-bikes that would induce a greater cost per year, but they're usually covered by warranties.
Yeah, I've actually found with my bike very little as far as surprise and expense. And it's been wonderful, because if I have had something go wrong, I've followed up with my bike shop or with the turn dealer, and it's been taken care of. So, you know, it doesn't even compare to the cost of having a car. And, you know, for some people it will replace a car, for others it just supplements having a car. And it's well worth it. You're going to be pleasantly surprised at.
Tatjana, can you talk a little bit about your how using the e-bike has affected your budget?
I was actually going to mention, so everyone said, like, yes, it's less expensive than the car. For sure, we're saving money on gas, a car maintenance and all that, but also time. And time is money. There's a lot of time saving. And again, as a mom, I keep saying I'm a mom, but as a mom of two little kids, where you don't have time, any time whatsoever, you don't have time to look for parking. You just want to pull into Balboa Park and go take the kids to, I don't know, the fountains. And you can't spend 30 minutes looking for parking and then carrying both children or like running after them. There's a lot of time savings. And I think that's the best part, in addition to gas savings and car maintenance savings. We haven't, my husband actually maintains my rad wagon. He does get a little bit frustrated with brakes. I think it may be connected to the way I'm riding. But he says, he's like, it says they should be replaced about once every 500 miles, I think it was. And he's like, I think I'm fixing your brakes every 150 miles. But I still, even with that, I don't think it's that big of a deal. It's still less expensive than car maintenance, and it's still totally worth it.
Yeah, plus I put in the chat, I mean, you're also saving expenses because it's good for your health. So in the long run, health and wellness, you're gonna save money. And it's so much more fun and efficient to do errands on a bike or an e-bike than it is in a car. You know, it's just amazing what it can do for you, you know, mentally, emotionally, physically, everything. It can be transformative, really.
And it's a fun thing to do with friends. Sorry to cut you off, Kevin.
No,
I was just going to say, it's a fun thing to do with friends. So from my example, again, with kids, it's like setting up a play date. You drive to a play date and then you meet there, and you don't have that much time together. Now you can ride together, and there are all these bike lanes, and it's extremely safe and fun. And the kids are looking forward to it. They spend more time outdoors. They really, everyone in the family benefits from it. And you're working out while you're commuting. Like, that's just incredible.